The Own Your Intuitive podcast is for the creatives, spiritual entrepreneurs, and light workers in the world. The shining ones who have been told to dim their light and stop believing in magic. I say screw that. The time to rise is now. To bring your gifts out into the world in a big way, creating a business that feeds your soul and your bank account. You are a magical being with the potential to change the world, one human at a time. The time for you to own your intuitive is now. Hey everyone, you guys do not know how excited I am to introduce today's guest to you. When I say the word powerhouse, Kareen Walsh comes to mind. Her energy is not only exceptional and completely, but it is like in charge. It is an in charge energy, and I'm so excited to learn and share her story today with how she uses and has actually gained this level of control over energy and magnifies it and amplifies it in a way that I have never seen anyone else do before. So Kareen, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh my God, girl. It's such a pleasure to be here and be talking to your spiritual, I'm going to call them gangsters, because I know how epic your listeners are. So thank you for having me.
This is going to be amazing. I won't lie, right before we popped on to today's podcast, I was like, Kareen, man, your cosmic team is talking about my cosmic team, and they're having a thing, and they're talking to me about all the things. So just to give you an idea of the level of connection that this podcast interview is going to have, we will be dropping all sorts of really great gifts on you guys on how to master this in today's episode. But for anyone who doesn't know you, Kareen, can you give us a little heads up on who you are, what you do, all the goods?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a lot of things, but most of all, my mission in life is to help people align what they love with what they do. And what I found about myself is that I cannot turn off the solutions-based mastery that I have within. So I, from a young age, was always had a heart of service, always. Sometimes that got me into great places. Sometimes that got me into being taken advantage of. And regardless, though, it's like the core of me. And my whole journey to date has been trying to make sure that I align with what's going on in my inner self in order to maximize how I earn, who I relate to, who I connect with, the adventures I like to go on. I really just try to build an aligned life. And so I run my own business today. I have a coaching and consulting practice. It came from many years of working in corporate, building up a career there, challenging my skill set on somebody else's dime, as I like to call it, because, in the corporate world, you're in their system, and having to really adapt, change, shift, and then move on in the corporate world helped me really figure out that it's leveraging the skill set you have, maximizing what you can do in the moment, but then realizing when you hit boundaries that are not your own, like the limitations of others. I always tell people, don't let the limitations of others limit you. Yeah. Then I would figure out for myself to check in and see what's next. What do I want to go after next? So there's a lot there. It's really, what more would you like to know so I could really dive in?
Well, yeah. So I'm already super curious because, you do coaching and consulting. Now, because you worked in corporate, do you gear your services to corporate, or are you just open for all humans in the world who are just like, I want to align?
Yeah, so I'm open for all humans. I would say that when it comes to income driving activities, right? So there's a strategy. I call myself a growth strategist, and that's inner growth as well as outer growth, like business growth or relationship growth, right? Like the inner growth has to happen first in order to stand really solid and build the structures around you. So the best way for me to kind of categorize that was growth strategy. Like growth is literally the undertone for everything I do. So when you ask about the how did I merge consulting and coaching, I didn't know how to turn off helping people figure out the how, which is what consulting is all about. And I am a master at like coach, where it's like, let's get over the obstacles. Let's work through what is stopping you, the fears, the doubt, etc., and really help guide you. A coach, in my definition, is not responsible for the outcome. A consultant is hired to make sure the outcome happens. I do both. And so I marry both in my practice because I don't know how to turn it off. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, this is me. I don't know how to turn it off. I know I might overwhelm you at times. Like I might, like a lot of people feel intimidated by me at times because I have all this capability, but truly I'm just resourceful for the moment of what is being demanded. And then I show up in that role. So that's how I merge the two.
Well, like I said, as soon as I felt your energy the first time, I was like, she is a powerhouse energy. And now you're just giving me the information as to
how it came to be.
Yes, yes. So before we get into this in more detail, let's go back to Kareen Walsh's origin story.
Sure. What would you like to know?
Anything that comes out is the right answer.
So I grew up, okay, so I'm first generation American. So we'll go back because it does have to do with who is speaking to your spiritual team right now. It's a lineage of many lives, I would say, that I've been around a few times, right? So I have a lot of ease when it comes to solving things right in front of me because I've been here before. Like, and I know that about myself, and it's also, just done that work. But my upbringing, being first generation American, so my family is Lebanese. They came to the States pregnant with me in 75. And being a first generation American growing up in the New York tri-state area, I was groomed at a young age to fit in, because my parents, especially on my mom's side, is like both of them actually are Palestinian refugees that then grew up in Lebanon, and there was a very much a they don't belong energy around them, and they wanted to make sure that as raising us in the States, trying to like build a better life for us here because of the war happening in Lebanon, we were trained in a way to adapt. So adaptability, being a chameleon, like setting into environments, started at a young age. I have two sisters, and I'm the middle child. Most people don't peg me as the middle child. They kind of think I'm the older one, because I had an energy from a very young age. My family even called me this at times, where I was the glue. Like they could tell me anything. I was always very supportive. I didn't really think well of myself, meaning I truly felt my energy was here to serve and not to ask for or not to demand anything. So at a young age, still forming in this life, there was a lot of the, decisions I would make where I would sacrifice myself for those around me. And I have a very strong empathetic side. And so I carried a lot of other people's emotions that were not mine for a very long time, which then I would say had me living smaller than the life I have now, peeling all those layers away of carrying everybody else. I had to really gain my emotional independence, as I call it. Didn't really work itself out until, my mid to late 20s. Did I start actually challenging the heaviness I was carrying around emotionally to connect with who I am and who I want to be in this world. And mainly the awakening came from having an amazing upbringing that I did, even though there was emotional dysfunction that occurred, being raised in the household, going through a traumatizing divorce of my parents. Like I was just at that forming age, so not really understanding what's going on, but also becoming super responsible in the family unit because of they were very dysfunctional about how they were working it out. It was in the late 80s, early 90s, where it was very materialistic. There wasn't really much care for how we were doing as children. Like it was more about my mom was in self-preservation mode with the way my father was behaving at the time. Totally different today, but this is what was going on then. And it was very like materialistic, I would say. That's how I categorize that time. And I'm very heart-centered. Like, yes, I like the nice things, but like, you know, it's not that what drives me. You know, I'm about connection and deepness and love and hugs and dancing and just like motion, right? And then I'm in this very intense situation where that was cut off in order to survive and keep up with the Joneses, or keep your appearances up, I would say. We couldn't talk about it emotionally at home. And my parents didn't talk to each other through that process. So then I became this like go-between. So I learned communication on behalf of others and how to mediate and how to debate and how to stand my ground at times very young, which helps in negotiations for business. It helps in navigating what I like to say, herding cats sometimes to get things done, right? Because I had learned those type of skills young. But what I didn't know is how to protect and nurture myself. So, you know, as a young girl, didn't really have that much at that stage. So then I graduated high school, went to college. I knew when I graduated high school, I would never be coming back home. Like I had to go fend for myself and build the life I wanted for myself. So I never had to rely on another in order to build the life that I wanted, you know, and it was really ingrained in me. You get your education, you get a job, like go. And I was very fortunate that my education was paid for. That was one thing that, you know, it was super great to come out of college and not have the debt that a lot of, you know, people deal with today. And I leveraged it. I was like, they invested in me, I better go make it. So I went to school in DC. I got a business degree and learned the fundamentals of business management. And then it was on the cusp of when technology was starting to merge up. Right? Like I graduated in 97. So, you know, that late 90s is like the internet's born. People are focusing more on software development. Like, you know, it's all that. This is back in the day where like AOL discs were still being shipped. Like, yep. You know, and that's what the start of my career was. So I decided as I graduated college, I had some girlfriends that were like, I think we're going to move to San Francisco. And I was in DC at the time. I was like, okay. So I sold, I think my computer, I don't know what, I sold stuff and I got graduation, like gift cash or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to move to California. Like I had maybe like a few thousand in the bank. And I was like, I'm just going to go figure this out. And I remember my mom, cause I had to stop up in New York before leaving. And she was like, okay, so I'll see you at the end of the summer. I think in her mind, she was like, to me, the way I digested it, I was like, oh my God, she thinks I'm going to go out there and fail. Like how I digested it, when she was probably like, this is something you're trying on, and I just hope you know, I'll see you when you get back, kind of thing. Yeah. But I took it as like fuel to the fire. Like, oh my God, like she doesn't even believe in me, because that's where my mindset was at the time in our relationship. We've gone through a lot of healing. That I was like, oh, now I have to make it work. What that turned into, though, was really making some bad decisions when I first got to San Francisco as a single female, because my friends ended up not moving. I was the only one that fulfilled the agreement. Yeah. And then that was like, because I'm one of those people where I follow through. Integrity is one of my core values, and I follow through. So I did. But I did it on my own. I managed to, I realized that and I didn't know much about California. I've only had visited like a couple times. It's not like I had people to go to. I found out though that I had a cousin there that was my age in San Francisco. So I stayed with him for a while. Like I was like couch surfing with my 2 bags, and then finally landed like a temp job. Then I found a studio apartment that I fought for, because at the time everyone was flocking to the Bay Area and because tech jobs were much higher there, like you could actually find work. And so rates of rent were going up. Now it's crazy. Like to live in San Francisco is like a whole nother world. But at the time I was like, how am I going to find a place? I'm barely making anything. You know, I remember being told like, oh, if you can even make like $25K a year, like that's amazing, you know? And I was like, 25K, man, that doesn't get you much, especially after taxes in San Francisco, you know. So I managed to land part-time job, found an apartment for like under 500 a month, which is crazy. It was a studio apartment, moved into there. Like, I just made it happen in those months. It was hard though. It was hard. And I was definitely relating to the wrong people at the time just to survive. I would say that that was my survival mode. The
And that was
first,
your 20s?
yeah, that was I was 23.
Yeah.
Yeah, I moved at 22, 23, right out of college. Just
Mhm.
literally like packed 2 bags and left, and just decided to start my career there. And I was able to like, I'm a good networker. I'm very relational because that's my heart. Like, I like connection. And so people who was able to connect with helped me navigate. My first real job, I hit a glass ceiling in at 23. If you can imagine, I don't know if any of your listeners or viewers have had the, you know, again, it's that whole don't let the limitations of others become your limit. But at 23, I mean, for a manager not to map out a growth plan for you, how would you expect that person to stay? You know, like if you're at the beginning, like you're at the beginning of your career. And today what I realize is that there's not many people actually training on leadership or training on how to manage or training on how to continuously develop themselves so that they can develop those that work for them. And it's still a gap today, which is why I have a thriving leadership coaching practice because even what I saw back then 20 years ago, because now it's actually been 20 years, which is crazy, it's still happening today. It's
Yeah,
like it still hasn't evolved.
all the jobs that I'm like a growth trajectory. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I've never in any of my jobs really had somebody nurture what my vision in the company was going to be.
It's really rare, but I would tell you that if people will latch on to that, especially your entrepreneurs watching and listening that are looking to build their teams, as you continue to grow yourselves, always focus on the growth of those who work for you. Like, you will get more out of them, exponentially more, because you're focused on their growth as well. And if you're not growing, it's 100% reflected in the growth of your business. 100%. Like, if you're not someone who's looking to grow as a leader of your business will flatline. And that's fine if it builds you that status quo. It's
Okay,
fine.
so for those who are listening and they're like, "Wow, she's talking to me. I think my business is flatlined." Can you explain what that means? Like, because you're like, when you do not have growth in yourself, is it you like? Just give me what you just said.
Yeah. So a great example, even in my own story, right? Like, I always started. So what I had to do is I learned the career traits, I learned the skills, I learned how to earn an income. Most of us are trained on how to how to earn an income. That's what we're trained to do. It's go get a job, earn an income, have your life. That's very limiting. Like, because you're then still tied to an income. Businesses run on revenue. They run on profit. It's a different language and it's a different model. So when you start your business generally, and I went through this myself, I started as a solopreneur consultant. I went from working for other people's companies, doing the same exact thing. I decided to sell as a consultant, trading my time for money, but earning twice as much. I doubled my rates, doubled, and I did consulting for many years. And it afforded me a great life. I worked 9 months out of the year, took 3 months off. Every 3 months, I would go and take a vacation. I would enroll in some sort of up leveling of a skill set. Like, I want to learn a new skill, get a new certification, whatever it was, so I could expand my mind and my offering. And then the third month would be about planning what's next. How can I leverage what I just learned to then take it to the next level, increase my rates, increase my offering, etc. But it was truly still trading my time for money. Totally acceptable. Earning 6 figures, high 6 figures, trading your time for money, that's great. But you're still limiting the potential of the business you're sitting on. That's truly contracting work, solopreneur work. It's not generally business management or running a business in creating a 7-figure revenue model that gives you consistent 6-figure income, right? Like, there's a difference there. I'm not judging either way, but it's an understanding to say, if your business is flatlining and you're in a business, especially trading your time for money, it will flatline because you're not thinking about all the different revenue drivers and what revenue for your business feels like. So when I hit 7 figures in my business, it was because I had to step outside myself. I had to say, okay, if I wanted to hit 7 figures in my business, so $1 million goal, let's just say, I know that either I'd have to work 40 hours a week and sell my time for $500 an hour to hit $1 million. But then what life is that? That's not the life I want to build for myself. That's not how I want to spend that time. That's not freeing. That's very shackled. So it's like, what do I do really well? And then how can I expand it past this framework? Like, how can I spend past me just selling my time? And so I expanded my business to say, okay, I know if I have to hit 7 figures, I need other people in the mix, or I need other offerings in the mix. And that's when I wrote my first book. It's when I decided to expand my consultancy past myself and I sold other people's expertise as part of my team, which is what I do today. I now can go into companies and do brand strategy work, technical delivery projects. I can do content strategy, marketing help. I'm not doing the work, but I have oversight and strategy over it. And then I'm getting these amazing people jobs. Like, they now have the work they want to do because they're not interested in running a business. They just want to earn their income. So it's just a matter of how do you expand past it.
Okay, I have a question for those listening who are the entrepreneur who wants to level into that next level of, their revenue. And they're like, but how do I know when is the right time? How do I know financially when it's a good investment to bring somebody onto my team? Let's go.
Yeah. I would love to solve it for all your listeners. It's also why I get hired as a strategic coach for their business, because each business is unique. Each skill set of each leader who's running it is unique. And so you need a framework to work within to say, okay, I want to stay in this zone. So for example, some of you listening or watching are focused on creative, like you're a creative design person and you're really intuitive to understand like exactly how this brand should come out. And you're the one that has to actually produce the work, right? You in your zone of genius is in that creativity. So why the hell would you want to be running operations for your company, or even driving sales and leads? Like, you have a discomfort, I am sure, 100% sure, trying to grab new clients to say, look at all this valuable jewels I can bring to you. And yet I have no idea how to draw you in. It's because it's not your zone of genius. So a lot of the time it's also first, number one, understanding your zone of genius and what lane you want to stay with. Number two is then assessing your gaps. So what do you need? Based on where you're trying to go, what or who do you need to either partner with or bring to the table or service to hire in order to leverage the machine that you're trying to run, which is the business, right? So that it doesn't feel like such a roller coaster where it's like when you're complete with that one project, it's like, oh shit, now I got to go find another project. I don't know how long that's going to take. It heightens the stress level. Now you're sitting idle and now you're burning through your savings or, like there's all the things that then create this gremlin in your mind that's telling you you're worthless. You don't know what you're doing. Like, what should I go work for someone else now? Like, right? It's all that doubt creature. We all go
Every
through
entrepreneur listening is like, oh my God.
this is me. Because it's me too. Like, it happens at all levels. The point of it is to try and figure out, based on your zone of genius, who and what do you need? The gap analysis. That would be step number 2. Number 3 is the clarity on where you're trying to go. So if you understand your zone of genius, and then the gaps of a true business model that you just like, I don't like sales, I don't want to operate, I hate doing inventory or invoicing, I really I don't like the contract work, whatever it is, right? Then you get the clarity, and the step 3 would be getting clarity on where do you want to go. Because when you understand truly getting clear, and I have an exercise, and I'll send you the link so that you can share this with your listeners and watchers. It's called quantifying your vision. There's one thing to sit and do vision boards and get excited about the life you want to have. And that's great because it does drive the energy of moving towards it. Yes. But a lot of the time, and why clients come to me now, especially in my one-on-one elite coaching practice, is that how, Kareen, like, how do I get there? Like, I got the clarity, but how the hell do I get there, right? It's that you need to quantify what you're going after in order to then say, this is worth it to take this action. This is worth it to do the hard stuff. This is worth it to go get this partnership, or worth it to lean on this client that I might give a discount to because they're going to boast about me later and I'm going to get 10 clients, as soon as I'm done. Whatever that looks like, it first starts with clarity of what it is. And so this quantify your vision exercise gives you this clarity exercise. It's a workbook. It's really cool. And you do a lot of journaling, but then you actually go through, what does it mean? So for example, if you're saying like, oh, I definitely want this like 4-bedroom house, and you put that picture up, it's on the beach and it has a gorgeous porch and you have a hammock there, like really visualizing it, getting clear on it. Okay. So now let's go look it up. How much does that house cost? Where is that house going to be? What does the car look like that's parked in the driveway? How much is that one? And we quantify it in a tangible way, because a lot of the times we dream, which is amazing and we should do. But then we need to make it tangible to decide what we want to go after.
Oh, you don't even know how good this was, because I didn't tell you what the cosmic team was telling, your team was telling my team to actually talk about, and it was money. But it was money in a way in which, and I think that this is really such an important conversation, because you know it, I know it, that the majority of entrepreneurs don't really know what's going on with the money of their business and their personal life.
Yes.
Right? It's almost like they're like, if I make it, then I can spend it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's a lack of planning. There's a lack of planning and understanding for sure.
So I just want to know this from the level of where you are. What about when your clients are coming to you with their money blocks? Because I'm sure they're coming to you and they're saying, well, I've tried everything and everything's going really, really well, and I don't understand. You're telling me, and we're looking up these houses and we're looking, but they can't associate even the quantifying to them actually being able to produce it. It's almost like a separate entity.
Yeah, there are 3 different entities. There's all the different models of which you can earn and drive revenue. And I love to change the language from income to revenue, right? Business revenue modeling and the way you run how revenue comes into your business to impact your cash flow. So it's also learning the language, right? Well, your cash flow is what you spend on yourself and on your services of your business. What you choose to write off, what you choose to invest in, where you choose to create more revenue for you. There are models around that whole thing, but you have to fully first stop thinking about just income, paying the bills, month-to-month living, because that is someone who belongs in someone else's company, getting the check, being addicted to the hamster wheel, and getting that check every month. And that is the conditioning that we've all had, especially those who have gone through working for someone else is now trying to run their own business or going into an entrepreneurial direction. If you don't take the time to understand what a true business entrepreneurial model could look like for you, that's the gap. So that's number one, like to really think about there. So revenue. Then there's the doing of your time, the doing of any service you put out there, the doing of any product that needs to sell. Today's age, which is really cool about technology, is you can automate a lot of it. The doing, you can automate, like the operations of your business. You can automate like e-commerce site. That's the best way to put it. Like you don't have to have a brick and mortar store anymore to sell your product. Like that's a prime example of the operation side, the doing. It's good to understand what is the doing required for your business, and then ask yourself, what role do you want to play? So who are you going to be in this business as the role? Do you want to own it or do you want to operate it? If you're going to stay in an operation role, it completely affects your revenue model, because you're the most expensive person in your company, right? Yep. So then it's a matter of understanding after the doing. It's then the growth of it all. Like, how to scale it, where to take it in order to meet all the demands of your life, because that's why you want to be this entrepreneur. Most people go into entrepreneurship, and I like to use my quotation hands because most people don't understand what it means to run their own business, is that it's because they had some sort of trigger or some sort of failed attempt working for other people. And they're burnt out working for other people. And now that we have a gig economy that anyone can leverage, I can go sell my service. I can go, go onto Upwork and like do contracting work and all this stuff, right? Like you could sell your time for money. Totally cool. You don't have to be a cog in the wheel. That's not necessarily entrepreneurship. And I think people misusing the term is what's kind of hurting why they're not growing or feeling flatlined or feeling the struggle of that continued hand to mouth situation every month, and needing more of the framework understanding to say, okay, now how do I play in this playground and how do I leverage it with all my skills? And then that gap analysis is super important to say, okay, this is what I know I want, but I know I also need to make sure I'm either capable of doing X, Y, Z, or I need somebody in my business that's capable of doing it.
Well, maybe you'll be able to like say, I'm doing a time study right now in my business because I am looking for what I am spending my time on that does not correlate with my zone of genius right now, to figure out where the hiring is most going to be beneficial in my business. So I appreciate this conversation so much. And I
just want to add one thing. As you're doing the time management thing, I don't know about the timesheet you're working on. One of the things that I always try to align true identity to is fulfillment. Fulfillment is like my number one word. So like when you look through where you're spending your time and then you score it and say, this is a 10 out of 10 fulfilling, I want to keep this. Like, don't take this part away from me to help you delegate the rest, is super important.
Well, we're only in that's the next. So for 2 weeks, I'm in a very specific, every 15 minutes, where is my time going, to really have a true understanding of the way that, each person in my company is doing the time study right now. So we can see the correlation. But one of the things that's the greatest thing that it was like a switch of perspective for me is realizing that systems are part of the spiritual practice.
100%.
There is nothing that, the resistance from within triggers when you are sitting down to say, learn the finances, or understanding the language or the tech, or, some sort of Facebook funnel or whatever it is. And for the most of the entrepreneurs that I have come into contact with in that, beginning their journey, those words alone will shut them down.
Mm. Yeah. So the question before you had about the blockers, right? Like when I hit obstacles with anyone, I'll give you an example of a new one-on-one coaching client I've been working with, and first session's great. We're working on vision. There's this excitement about it, but then we get to the quantify your vision exercise, right? Where we're starting to put the dollars around it. And I kept getting, I just can't see it. I just can't see it. And so, okay, so tell me a little bit about where your finances are right now. Like, where are you struggling right now financially? Because if you can't see how to make this tangible, we have to figure out, well, what's the blocker right now? And it ended up that he had created this credit card debt, he and his wife doing certain things. And it was daunting him every month to just even send the minimal payment, right? To go pay that down. And I said to him, knowing his age and everything, because there's different ways I've leveraged money in the past to give me that mental clarity and freedom in order to act into the dreams I want, where I was like, okay, so you have this debt. What's the interest rate of this debt that you're paying against? It was like, the enormous 19-20%, I don't know what, right, against this card. I was like, okay. And then you're telling me that you're paying X amount, the minimum, so you're not making any hit against this debt. But you also are telling me you're investing with your financial planner. There's like money sitting that's supposedly earning for you. Do you know the percent of that money sitting there earning for you? Oh, it's probably like, 4 or 5%. I said, okay. So your math is upside down right now. So I literally had to talk him through the financial understanding. I said, if you have money sitting, and granted it's earning over time a 4 or 5%, but you're bleeding money at a 20% rate that you're actually sending your cash flow to, like your cash out of pocket is going against something that's continuing to bleed. We need to stop the bleeding and take the money out of your investment account if it's liquid, right? This is not touching retirement funds or anything. He just had like this liquid money aside, and pay that off. Or even if you were able to take a loan against yourself. And so people don't understand what they have to leverage, even to create a more secure financial situation for themselves. And I'm not a financial advisor, so like, please don't call me or message me and say like, Kareen, how do I handle this? And like, then sue me later because of whatever decision you make. I'm just telling you a model that tends to work when you know your numbers. Like, and he went and talked to his guys, but I basically was like, this is what I would do if I were you, because I've been in this situation. I totally have run up debt before and then had to swap money in to pay that off because I was a leverage for me to go after something at that time. But I also know the numbers, and I know about the rates, and I know about how my money grows. Like, I took money education when I wasn't feeling empowered about my money. I had to go learn more about how to make my money work for me, right? So he ended up paying off immediately the credit. I mean, and he paid off the credit card debt. He managed the way the assets go. Now this cash flow is in his account. And we even worked up to saying, okay, what needs to be in your bank for access for you to have more fun in this hard life that you've built for yourself? Like, you're earning, you're doing an amazing job. You're like having all these wins, but you need to have fun too. The hard work is, and he's like, he had this minimum amount. I said, great. Looking at your numbers now with the cash flow that's come in, how do we get to your minimum in your checking account before we then take the surplus that you're no longer shelling out to this credit card company that's not going to ever give you a return? They're just going to keep taking more, and then flow that back into your investment pool so that you can quantify your vision, right? So it's a lot of it for me and my own journey, and it's what I bring to my clients all the time. It takes me to understand my wealth and like how I choose to manage it, to empower myself was the number one thing. And everybody is capable about figuring that out for themselves.
So I love this conversation, and I love that, people listening and people watching are like, this makes sense. I can understand this. And so I've got the business plan now. I've got understanding, the three parts of it, and I got my money language, and I understand my business, and I know, who I need to hire. I get the gap thing down, but now I'm super nervous and uncomfortable and hesitant about putting myself out there in bigger ways. Like, we've just come up with a plan, and we're going to change. Maybe I'm going to increase my prices, or I'm going to add a new service, or I'm going to do all of these things. But what do I do now? What's Kareen's model on helping them push through those?
Yeah, let's get to the root of why you're hesitant. I always had to remind myself. So I am probably the most self-critical person you'll come across. Like, the gremlins in my head talk to me all the time. And they're telling me, like, for the most part, I finally have the practices down where I quiet them down really quickly and I tell them not today so that I can move on, right? Like, it has to be simple, be like, because shut up is a little harsh, but not today, because they're going to show up anyway, right? Anyway, the point being is, you will always have doubt when you come across something new that you want to venture against. You will always doubt it because you haven't done it before. So just take that step forward into it and try. Like, it's that simple. It's action. Take one action towards it and literally find out what the truth is, as opposed to listening to the stories in your head or the gremlins talking to you about all the bad things that will happen, that you won't know until you step forward into it. So how bad could it really be? Oh my God, you tried and one person said no. Well, try again. Like, try again until you get the yes, because if it's your calling, especially if you are, spiritually connected, these are your gifts. These are your messages. This is what you're meant to do in this world. You're embodying the spiritual path you're meant to be on. Why wouldn't you put it out there?
Well,
You're
I'm gonna be the people, because I know the people that listen to,
please tell me.
because I'm too much, because I'm overwhelming people, because, they're not going to want to see me like pitching myself all the time or promoting myself all the time, or all of this stuff is like I'm in their face. All of those kinds of conditioning
Yeah.
comes up a lot in the new entrepreneur, and in the, even the established entrepreneur. Those are those things. And this is what I mean when started to like connect with you. I was like, man, Kareen is like on fire. You're like always in a state of like
doing,
talking about it, and sharing what it is that you do, and inviting people in. Like even in our group today, it was like I read your wins for the week, and it was like, and there's 4 more spots, and you guys get an automatic in. You know what I mean? Like there's always a call to action and everything.
So it comes from knowing yourself well enough that you're always going to be of service. Like, honestly, that's the stance I have. And if I am not the one inviting people in to witness and take advantage of and be a part of the service, the community, the conversation, like the podcast I have, the programs I offer, the coaching I have, right? Like if I'm not the one talking about it and I always rely on others, they're misrepresenting me all the time. And that's why I am consistently attracting the wrong people, right? Can any of you listeners or watchers relate to that? Why are all these people coming to me that I really don't want to work with? It's because you're not articulating who you want to work with. You are the number one Pied Piper of your business. And if you're not comfortable with sharing it, then start getting the help to figure out that comfort, right? Dialoguing in the safer spaces if you're still not sure. Do not sell to your friends and family. Like rule number 1, because of course they're going to be the first ones to judge it or have fear for you or worry about like what you might attract in. Like I still have, family. My family doesn't even know half the shit I do. Like, it's just like, I show up, I do things because I am always of service. Like that's, my core values are love, integrity, and lots of hugs. But it's like, no, really. Creativity. I'm just teasing. Creativity, love, and integrity. But I do love my hugs too. I would call the hug a muffin. Like if you ever meet me, you will get a hug from me. But the point of it.
In November?
Yeah, girl. Lots of hugs.
Right, then we are going to get our hugs in then.
I'll have to wear my deodorant.
Now we're keeping it real.
No, I smell good all the time too. There's no smell vision here, but it's all good.
Scratch and sniff podcast. That'll be the next invention for sure.
But the point is to be real, right? Like this is who I am. Like when you start staying to yourself, this is who I am. And I'm doing myself a disservice not to show up in my true authentic self, even when it's uncomfortable. The most powerful people out there were 100% uncomfortable about selling whatever it is they're doing now. And the reason they've created a sales machine around them and think about the people you admire the most. If they did not go ahead and put themselves out there to sell and to invite you in and to make you a part of their community, how lesser of a life would you have right now? So why would you do that disservice to your community, to the people who are meant to come and work with you, especially knowing your listeners and watchers are spiritually connected? You are a conduit. It's not about you. So let it go. Just like let go of that and just put it out there. And you will fumble. Give yourself permission to fumble when you do that too. Like every time before I go out on a stage, I constantly think about tripping. I think about falling on my face. I think about, having to go to the bathroom and how the heck can I get off the stage? I mean, all the things, right? All the nervousness comes to me. And then I have to ground myself and say, Kareen, just ask for the ability to serve. And whatever comes out in this moment is what's meant to be. And you will, and just impacting one is such a gift, So that's the work that actually has to be done, because that's self-management right there, what that question is about.
Beautiful. So I actually want to go back way back to something you said way in the beginning of the podcast, which you won't remember saying, but I was like, oh, I'm going to ask about this at some point.
Yeah. What's that?
Well, because you had said, like, this is my first turn on this earth, right? Like, and then you had mentioned that you can remember. So can
This
you,
is, I've been here multiple times.
right?
Oh, sorry.
So like this, we're talking about like past lives, guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like in case anyone's like, well, she just really took a different trajectory. Yes, I am. I am going from
Let's go
one
there.
direction to the other because I think this is a really powerful piece of information. Is you're telling me that you can tap into things through your past lives that say like what you've done and what you haven't done and what's worked and what hasn't worked and those kinds of things. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the way I translate knowing that I've been in through past lives before is that these random challenges would come my way in this life of other people's, right? Like other people would be coming to me with their challenge of certain thing. All of a sudden I would have this amazing, like, go do this. Like it would like the solution that they needed would come through that I never lived through in this life. But it was so familiar and so aligned with what they needed to hear that that's how I know that ease of me showing up in that moment, feeling familiar in that moment, knowing it never happened in this particular life is why I know that it's been up multiple times. Then also working with clairvoyance and Reiki and the different practices of connecting to my spiritual self, asking the questions of my spiritual team, to tell me when did this come up. Like when I have those instant connections with people and I'm like, you and I have definitely had like past lives together. And then checking in with my team, like, yep, you guys have been brother and sister for like, I don't know how many lives. And that's why it feels so familiar here, so that it's really just being open to it. Yeah.
So I'm super jazzed about this conversation because I'm like, and where in your life did you really start to formulate that relationship with, your spiritual team and being able to ask those questions? Because for most people who ave are dabbling in with their spiritual team and they haven't learned that all they need to do is ask.
Yeah. The way I would say for me, the first phase of truly opening up, I had to release a lot. So I'll go to that point in my world first, was when I was on, let's see, I had ended a relationship, again, another toxic relationship in my life that I was like, I have to break this cycle. Like I have been doing the work with like a homeopathic therapist and I was engaged to this person and it was time to move on. And again, success was always there from a career standpoint, but my inner life and how I treated myself and my relationships at this time, this was, I was maybe 32, trying to like really navigate the, like, I want more and I deserve better. And I just don't know how to navigate that. Right. So I was doing the work on the mind and then healing my inner turmoil. My body has always had its own dysfunction, like digestively. That was always a reaction to the toxic places I put myself in, all the things, right? So I ended that relationship and went on a journey of a bit to go to the root of where the problem was. Emotionally, it was with my mother at the time because unconditional love was truly conditional. I was, like really in my body. And I was like, I'm never going to attract the right relationship for me if I have these old stories playing and this energy that I need to shift. So I went and lived with her for 6 months while I got a contract gig because I was working for myself. At the time I was in Colorado, and then I went and worked in Virginia for 6 months because that's where she was living, to heal that relationship in order for me to move on, right? To like,
okay, I have to ask this because, whoo! So we know the trigger is mom, so we place ourselves into
the fire
experience.
Yeah.
That really, that's like, I am blown away by this. I think this is like the most powerful thing dropping here. Guys, listen to this, right? Because most people would run the opposite direction and you're running into it so that every time you're triggered, it's a gift to release. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it was more of I don't want this story to run my life anymore. And I knew that I wanted to have a relationship with my mother. And I knew that I was always the empathetic one in our relationship the whole time. So I know it wasn't her intention how I was translating what was happening to me in our relationship. I also played a role in that, but I no longer wanted to play that role. So I needed to redefine our relationship together if I was going to have one with her. And I knew the only way for me to do that was to be in her presence and have more of a pattern, because like I said, I hadn't been home since 18. Not that I didn't have a relationship with her, but we had not been under the same roof sharing meals together in this way. Like we've had visits, trips back and forth. We've always had that relationship, but it got so toxic at some points with, especially when I was in that former relationship where like I would have visceral reactions to her not knowing that like her triggered words were triggering me in this way, and how, because I never told her to treat me any other way, right? Like I didn't know that I had that right. Like I was her child, And so there was a lot of things where I would hang up the phone and I'd want to, and I would get violent in my head. I never got violent physically, but in my head. And then it would turn into self-sabotage through food and through these bad relationships I was in, because my acceptance of what I felt love would be for me was much lower than what I truly deserved. And so that's the pattern I needed to stop, because what I did with that relationship I was in, we were attracted to each other because we both understood the same pain, but really didn't know how to celebrate life. And so luckily I was doing the work on me not to go down that route and marry him. And it was a divine separation. Like we were all good because he agreed like that it was not the fit. And so when I went to do the work and be under my mom's roof, and I had a separate apartment in her house, so it's not like we were like on top of each other, because that would have suffocated me, but it was a way for us to just have more conversations in a cyclical way, and for me to voice my pain, give myself permission and the boundaries, like re-engage on the boundaries that would be required for us to have a relationship. And fast forward to today, like because of that time, we've been able to heal so much that I literally interviewed her on my podcast. So if your listeners want to hear it, she was my Mother's Day guest.
Oh my goodness.
And we actually have this like amazing dialogue on my podcast, sharing her journey and, our healing together. And, so it's a choice. It all comes down to a choice. So those who think they need to run away, it's probably because they are afraid of the reaction of the other person. But I'll tell you this, the value of you standing in who you truly are in all relationships is the number one thing to master if you want to have a fulfilled life, because no one else dictates that but you. And you 100% can give any relationship in your life a boundary that's acceptable to you, or you release it and let go.
Yeah.
But the spiritual awakening or the spiritual connection that happened afterwards was then I traveled after the 6 months. I finished my gig. I was kind of done with all the heaviness of the work. But I realized this one core lesson I had not learned yet, which I was so blessed to learn on this trip I went on. I managed to go to Europe during that year. The cousin that I stayed with in San Francisco actually passed away in a motorcycle accident. And his mother is my aunt on my father's side. And so I said, I didn't want her to be alone for the holidays that year, because he and I were so close. He was like the male version of me. And like my heart was broken for him in that, thinking I know what he would want to do for his mom during the holidays. So I called my father and I said, I want to come spend the holidays with you. He lived in Europe at the time, and she was in Dubai. And that's where his accident was, in Dubai. And so I knew the holidays for her would have been horrible. So I was like, can you fly her? We'll meet you at your place in Europe and like spend the holidays together. And he's like, of course, yes. Like, because he and his sister are super tight. And so that was his way also of being able to be there for her, which was beautiful. So then we had this amazing Christmas together and then New Year's plans. But then I didn't feel fulfilled enough of the care I wanted to be there for her. So I decided to go to back to Dubai with her, because I could. Like, that's the beauty of the time of life I was in, where I was like, I'm riding the wave right now, and then I could go back and find work when I need to find work. So I went back to Dubai and I spent another 2 weeks there. While there, I met my meditation guru, and it was totally by divine intervention. And when I say this, and this could be a whole nother podcast, because like, so I know we're like almost at time, but I want to just share this one thing. It was really funny of how I met her. I met her through a flood in the apartment building of my aunt's flat. So the ground floor apartment, this woman, my guru, was staying downstairs, and there was a monsoon rain in Dubai, so desert, right? Like they don't have any flood laws. They don't think about like rain. These buildings that are like built to not even drain like light rain properly, let alone like a monsoon. Plus, it was built on a man-made lake, and the ground floor was on that lake. So the overflow of all this rain was starting to come into that apartment. The neighbor came upstairs and said, hey, can our guest come stay with you? She was here to run a retreat, like do a meditation, all the stuff for the women's community here. Can she come stay with you? And I was like, yes, like, I'm super excited. And my aunt was like, sure, because my aunt's so generous, right? So the woman comes up, and I had still been having all these gut issues, and anyway, long story short, her name's Dr. Vilima, Dr. Villy Doctor. And she's amazing because what she does is stress management meditation, but also truly she's an energetic healer, like on fire. Like the fact that this woman's in my life was such a gift. But what she taught me through her meditation practice was forgiveness. And I had never learned the practice of forgiveness until this moment, like the true, like understanding of what it means energetically to forgive and let go. And that blessing has changed the trajectory of me being open to my spiritual connections, because I couldn't hear them otherwise before. I was so dark on the inside, carrying around this burden of all the stories, of all the hurt, of all the pain, even doing the work, even trying to heal, even verbally having a different format and a boundary and being able to find my voice. I still had a lot of darkness. And it was until the forgiveness practice went in every single day, and I still practice it today. But until that happened, I wasn't able to actually sit and hear my guides. And they come to me now daily, obviously, and in moments. And I use the intuition that I get as well in my practice. So
that is powerful. Like I'm so grateful for this story, because it's interesting, and I'll just share this with the listeners too, is that I just read Loving What Is by Byron Katie. And I don't know if you've...
Yes, she's amazing. The work. Yeah, she calls it the work. Yeah.
Right, which is the inquiry into your thoughts, but it is forgiveness work. Like it is the forgiveness. And guys, I can tell you right now, it's a game changer. Like it really, really is. So what a powerful thing to kind of be ending today's podcast. We talked about all the business models and all the money and then forgiveness. I this is really the true spectrum.
I told you I don't know how to turn it off. You really can hit me up with anything. And if I don't know it, I will find the person that does. So yeah, and my pleasure. Like it's been so much fun talking about all the different modalities, because that is living, right?
It totally is. And I am just so grateful for you coming in and sharing your expertise and your gift with us today. I do ask this one question. The first answer is that's one of my things for my practice, is the first answer is the right answer. So whatever I ask, it's the one answer, no more than one. Don't think about it. But what is right now, for my listeners and viewers, what is the one book that you would say really supported your journey and catalyzed any of the experiences that you've had?
Catalyst. The book I love to lean into, I would say, is A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
Beautiful book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For anyone not watching and didn't go over to YouTube, did not see the smile that Kareen just made, because that was pure and like I was tapping into that smile there. So Return to Love, because I give out every quarter, I give out the books, so everybody can have a book, because I'm a big book nerd. So thank you for that one. I don't think that one's been on the list yet.
Oh, great. Well, and then there's my 2 books also, just to share with your listeners and watchers too. If you want more about the journey with my mother, that's the Be a Badass book. And then if you want more about the leadership, business, strategy stuff, that's Lead with Value. So if that helps you too, since you have a book list, that could also help your listeners as well.
See, this is what I mean by when you give with service, where most people will be like, oh, I can't say that at the end of a podcast. You do. And I so appreciate that about you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Like, it's my favorite. I'm like, when I grow up, I'm going to be like Kareen one day. Like, I actually truly like believe this in my heart, just so you know. Super grateful for you being on the show today. Absolutely love you. Listeners, please show us some love. Let us know what your thoughts were by tagging us. I'll have all our social media tags there for you, and have the most exceptional day. Thank you.